Monty's my uncle. My father, Brooks, was his older brother by 1 year. I never met him, so my relationship to Monty is really through people that knew him and loved him, and also through a lot of archival materials that I grew up with in my house, specifically in the basement. When I was younger, I mean, some of these materials look so, I didn't know what they were, like with a reel-to-reel player, right? So I would go down in the basement and just kind of try to figure things out and read through old letters and stuff like that. So that's my relationship to Monty.
I think that, as Robert has said to many people at this point, that like the timing had to be right for making the film. We've made films that are very different than this, not quite as personal, and about different topics. But I think we hit a point where we felt like we'd come far enough along as filmmakers, gotten kind of secure in our research and all of this, and felt like it was a good time to get started.
So growing up, I was always very aware that what I heard about Montgomery Clift as a person in the kind of the public was very different than what I heard at home, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what that difference was or why it was so different. I just knew that it was different, and there was also a lot of pain involved. That people felt like the way that Monty had been represented was something that they disagreed with, but also created a persona that they didn't recognize. So the film is very much about trying to figure out exactly what the difference is about and what exactly about that persona caused people pain. And then in terms of how he was represented, I think what we came to find out is that oftentimes there's this persona of Montgomery Clift in public, in like the public sphere prior to this film, is that he was someone that was self-loathing, closeted, and had inner demons. Oftentimes people use the expression inner demons when talking about his sexuality, that he frequented dangerous gay bars. So there's these certain codes that come up that for me as like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old I didn't necessarily understand. But after a number of years and talking to family members and kind of putting all the archival materials in conversation with each other and with Hillary and with family, and a better understanding came into view.
One thing that's really surprising when you make a film like this, and this film very much is tracing how the public came to know Monty, so it's looking at how his image came to be what it was. Seeing where those breakdowns happened was very interesting, and especially getting to look at it not in real time, but in kind of a chronological sense once we organized the archive. Monty's image was this kind of tragic story, and what you get to see emerge through these personal accounts and home movies and recordings is somebody who had the full range of human experience, Yes, some downs, but joy and integrity and creativity, and that's valuable. It's a great thing to know about him. So I was really happy that we were able to have all of that kind of come out.
He really hoped to generate or help participate in getting an image of Monty out there that was somebody that he recognized, that was true to the person that he knew, and he was not successful in doing that. And then in addition to that, I think that he felt a degree of responsibility for the way that Montgomery Clift became portrayed. And that was, I imagine, hard for him. And it certainly ended up being the case that a number of family members didn't talk to each other because they felt like he, was the one that supplied this whole narrative and that he was happy with the story and this and that. A lot of people in my family kind of gave up. They felt like no matter what they said or shared, who Montgomery Clift was would be shaped into kind of a standard formula. People often think of this idea of the closet as this kind of clear dichotomy or binary, right? And Monty was somebody who, throughout his career, seems to have really done what he wanted to do, right? In a number of spheres, as an actor, in terms of choosing his own directors he wanted to work with, in terms of choosing parts, in terms of introducing a different, style of acting to American audiences, but also in terms of not playing along with the heterosexual masquerade that would have been required of him if he had signed, for example, a 7-year contract. I think that there are different ways, or there was different ways, that people could be silent about their sexuality at that time. He wasn't going to hold a press conference about it, and I think that's clear. But what he did know is that he wanted the right to be with the people he wanted to be with. And so his approach was to preserve his freedom, not participate in a sexual masquerade or a heterosexual masquerade, and not really talk about his private affairs with men or women.
Monty and Houston worked together on The Misfits, and as one will hear in the film, it sounds like they didn't really have any issues at that point. But, working on Freud, where Monty is the whole film, I mean, he's in every scene, he's the title character, he is the everything in that film. And in the course of production on that, he's unable to get the kind of feedback that he needs while working. He's getting script revisions, like late into the night, and in a later lawsuit is accused of not being able to remember his lines or refusing to remember his lines. And the circumstances are such that it's not conducive. It sounds like there were a lot of hostilities on set. And for all of the production delays and budget overages and all of this to be put on Monty later in a lawsuit, it then really damaged his career in terms of reputation and insurability. And he won the lawsuit, but it didn't really matter because the publicity took everything over. And for someone whose work was so important to him, being put in a situation where you're not able to do that work is difficult. And Brooks Clift, Robert's father, I think looked at that particular production as a really difficult time for Monty, and something that really contributed to him not doing so well.
Well, I think that really, if you just remove that central narrative, the stereotype that is often mentioned in relationship to him, you can see so much more of his work, and you can feel so much more of his personality. I myself didn't appreciate some of his later films because of this mythology around everything he did after this car accident was all a downward spiral. He did some wonderful work after this car accident. And so I think that what I hope is that when people are able to see who he was and to watch his performances with a different lens, they'll be able to appreciate them.
I hope, one, that people go and look at his films again, rewatch them, watch them for the first time, and appreciate what his contribution was to American cinema, to acting, to world cinema actually as well. But then, on another level too, I mean, here's a person who is an important figure in queer history, and to be able to see that here's a person who was not sad all the time, was not trapped in some horrible inner torment, somebody who had joy. I mean, I think that's an important thing. I mean, we talk so much now about representation and how much it matters for people to be able to see different experiences on screen. here's somebody who was super important, and I think we get to have him back in that spot. I think that's great.